Welcome to Friends in Faith. This week we're going to be talking about the Second Vatican Council, and we've heard so much about it. But what is the Second Vatican Council? Why did they have the Second Vatican Council? First of all, it was a council where bishops and experts went to Rome during a four-year period, beginning of 1962 to the end of 1965, where they deliberated about how do we bring the church, its doctrine, its rites, its teachings into a aggiornamento. Find a language and a way of evangelizing to a culture that was rapidly going against a sense of God. It was leaving the church. It was becoming more and more hostile towards religion. And so, first we need to say, what is a council? A council is the highest and the principal body that governs the church. Whenever there's been a crisis in the church, whenever there has been a really important question on dogma, they have called a council. The first council was the Council of Jerusalem. Then you had the four Christological councils. And then you had the Council of Trent to handle what happened with the Protestant Reformation. All of these councils were absolutely necessary. And so the first thing is, we've always seen councils as a way that the Holy Spirit works through the church to help the church and help the church focus. The Second Vatican Council came together because our culture, since the Industrial Revolution on, had changed more and more quickly than any other time in history. And the church said, we need to take a step back and look how we are presenting the deposit of faith and truly understand that we have to be what the world needs from us without changing our teaching or anything else, but maybe the way we teach. Okay, so the purpose was to revitalize the church, renew the church's mission, better understand the church's teaching in modern society, and create opportunities for Christians who are separated from Rome to work with Rome and to have much more synergy with the other Christian churches. The participants were the bishops of the world, and the different sessions they would come in and work with that. So let's look at the different documents of the Second Vatican Council. And the most famous one, and it's really interesting because a lot of times you ask, what did the Second Vatican Council do? And it's reduced to a document called the Constitution on Sacred Liturgy, Sacrosanctum Concilium, which was promulgated December 4th, 1963. It ordered an extensive revision of worship so that people would have a clear sense of their own involvement in the Mass and other rites. We can forget what it was like before the Second Vatican Council, when the majority of people didn't even hear the priest. He was sort of mumbling the Latin. And they would be in the pew praying the rosary. And the church said, we need to bring the liturgy out so that the laity becomes more and more involved in the life of the church. The Lord be with you and with your spirit. There is a give, there's a take, there is an action going on of the entire church, and how important that was. Now, a lot of people have complained that we've lost a lot of the sacredness and beauty of the old liturgy. And there's always been a sacredness and beauty. But I believe, so if you read this document, it doesn't say we need to get rid of everything that made the Mass sacred. But it said we need to increase the participation and the awareness of the people of what is going on. And I think it's one of the most important documents, but it's not the only document. It also said that instead of Latin, you would have the vernacular, or the language of the area to be used. The music would come from traditional music, where you could have a more modern music. And the third thing was, before you had the priest, he had his back to the congregation because he represented the entire congregation's prayer towards God, right? And now he was facing the congregation, and together they were bringing their prayers towards God in a much more interactive way. So those were the biggest changes that we've seen. The second document is the decree on the instruments of social communication, Inter Mirifica, December 4th, 1963. It called on members of the church, especially the laity, to instill a human and Christian spirit into newspapers, magazines, books, films, radio, and television. And that we should see these as instruments of evangelization and not just leave all of these things to those who don't believe in God. But we had an obligation to enter into these fields. And I think that's a really important message for today. The third one was the dogmatic constitution on the church, Lumen Gentium, one of the most important ones, November 21st, 1964. And it presented the church as a mystery, as a communion of baptized believers, as the people of God and the body of Christ, as a pilgrim moving towards the fulfillment in heaven, but marked on earth with a sanctity that is real, although imperfect. It's one of the most beautiful and meditative documents of what is the nature of the church. And I invite everybody, if you've never read this document, to read it. It's beautiful. And it really is a reflection of who we are as the church. And it goes back to the first church's image of the church. And it recovers those which were used right at the beginning of the church. Another important document is the decree on ecumenism, Unitatis Redintegratio, November 21st, 1964. And it says that ecumenism has to be a very important factor, and that we can't just be on the defensive on sort of why we're better than others. Yes, we have to defend the truth of the church, but that we have to work together with other churches in helping to have Christian cultures. And we've seen that play out in the pro-life movement and so many other issues where Christians have come together in respect and true love and worked together for the issues of the day. So it gave this new, revitalized importance to ecumenism. The decrees on the Eastern Catholic churches, Orientalem Ecclesiam, which stated really interesting that the variety within the church does not harm its unity, but that the Eastern churches should retain its own tradition, and we should truly appreciate the differences within the different individual churches. Decree on the bishop's pastoral office of the church, Christus Dominus, October 28th, 1965, one of the last decrees. It said that the bishop has the full ordinary power in its own diocese and is expected to present Christian doctrine in ways adapted to time and place, and it urged the conference of bishops to exercise pastoral direction jointly, to work helping each other out in looking at problems and looking for solutions to those problems. Then, the decree on priestly formation, Optatum Totius, October 28th, again, 1965. It recommended that seminaries pay attention to the spiritual, intellectual, and disciplinary formation necessary to produce priests as saints and good pastors. The decree on the appropriate renewal of religious life, Perfecte Caritatis, October 1965. It provided guidelines for the personal and institutional renewal of lives of nuns, brothers, priests belonging to religious orders. And this is one of the most important ones. But again, it was a very broad document, and some religious institutions took it to extremes. And I want to say one thing. We can't judge a council by what happens in the next 10 years. There was a lot of religious that left religious life because, you know, in these documents, you can have interpretations of the documents that are a pendulum. And they go from one extreme to another extreme. And they say it takes 50 years to find the medium. And in religious life, there were a lot of interpretations of what this document said. But if you look at the document itself, it's beautiful. And St. John Paul II, Pope Benedict, and St. Paul VI all saw their pontificate as a way of bringing the pendulum back into the center. And so the renewal of religious life was one of the most important ones. We could discuss that for hours. The decree on the relationship with non-Christian religions, Nostra Aetate, it called on the church to rejects nothing that is true. It rejected that we couldn't find anything that is good in other religions. And he says, no, there are good things in other religions, and we have to recognize them, that they are not in true unity with the truth, and they do not have all of the truth. But we cannot demonize any other religions. And it called for an end to anti-Semitism and discrimination based on race, color, religion, and condition in life, as Christ taught us. The decree on Christian education, Gravissimum Educationis, and it reaffirmed the parents' right to choose, and the parents being the chief educators of their children, something that is really important today. A very important one. Dogmatic Constitution on Divine Revelation, Dei Verbum. We could talk about Dei Verbum, really important. And it gave the guidelines on how to interpret divine revelation, and is one of the most magnificent documents of Vatican II. Declaration on Religious Freedom, Dignitatis Humanae. It said that religious liberty is a right found in the dignity of every single person, and no one should be forced to act in any way contrary to her own beliefs. And this is one of the most important ones, because all across the United States and Europe today, there are forces trying to take away religious freedom. So this, I think, is going to be one of the greatest and most important documents of Vatican II. The decrees on ministry and life of priests. It said the chief duty of a priest is to proclaim the gospel, and encourage for us to live celibacy as an incredible gift and not something that we put up with. The decree on the church's missionary activity, Agentes, and it said that we have an obligation to continue to go out to proclaim the gospel to everyone, and that we should also consider the social and economic welfare of the people and help bring justice to all people who are especially hurting. And the last one is the Pastoral Constitution on the church in the modern world, Gaudium et Spes. And it said that the church needs to begin to talk to atheists, those in doubt, and there's a continual campaign for those issues that are so important in the world. Peace, nuclear war, all of these things that are happening today. And it goes and it says that the church has to be a major factor in this dialogue. Because if we do not dialogue with the world will become atheist, and its values will become atheist, and it will be to the detriment of everyone. So again, Vatican II is a magnificent set of documents for the church, and we're still reaping the benefits of Vatican II, but we also have to be careful of what the Vatican II did not say. And we hear so many things in the name of Vatican II that you will not find in these documents. So we need to go and appreciate what Vatican II had to say. So hopefully you'll have a great discussion on how you see Vatican II, how you remember Vatican II, and we can get some good discussions going. Thank you, and God bless you.